Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I am Nick Kanoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm very excited for today's production of ALN Thursday at 4. Before we get going, I just want to thank our patron sponsors, ABS Quality Evaluations, an ABS Group company, and Onuma System. And you can find out more at abs-qe.com, abs-group.com, and onuma-bim.com. Our organizational members are also important for this program and other programs that the Asset Leadership Network does. So we want to make sure to thank them as well. That's Lifecycle Engineering, University Health, Uberlytics, Grant Thornton, Andrew James Advisory Group, AIM for AMS, Asset Management Lab, Mentor APM, My Property ID Registry, and Strategies Insight. And last but not least, we want to say next Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, that's August 17th, we will have Chris Gully on this program. So tune in if you want to see Chris. And with that, I would just like to say, if you're out there watching, we'd love to hear from you. So please send any comments, questions, or feedback to the chat, and I will help Mike keep abreast of that discussion. So with that, Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Nick. And Nick is working out of his place in Landers. And today I am here with retired Colonel Ronald Bordenaro in the Bordenaro dining room, and it's in South Holland, Illinois. And I'm very happy to have my father as a guest on this program. He has an extensive career in many careers. He's been in the military. He's an educator. He had a job as the code enforcement officer for the village of South Holland.
Carpentry.
And he's been involved in carpentry and has been actively involved in the Catholic Church in an asset management way. Where to start with everything? So
You tell me.
This has been a real good experience because I've been explaining to my parents more about ISO 55000 and the ISO 55001 list that is systematically vetted by expert asset management experts around the world, divided into categories, and has a list of to-dos to improve any asset, the value that that asset brings to an organization. And so the overriding theme of talking with my father is how he has always brought an innovative approach to any organization he's been involved in. And that innovation involves assets. And to implement a structured approach to asset management, you have to be innovative. You are going to transform your organization, and you have to be ready for the benefits that come with it, but there's going to be changes, and people don't like changes, but they're going to be coming. And in this day and age, with the tools advancing as fast as they are, our opportunities to improve our organization are increasing daily, and to have a structured approach allows you to bring that innovation in a structured manner. Well, my father did innovation without ISO 55000. He improved assets and used them in innovative ways. So let's go into some of them. One of my favorite stories about his asset management was when he was the battalion commander for an engineering unit in Vietnam. And you had excess material that was, why don't you tell that story?
When we got there, there was an excess of contaminated jet fuel. What happened was the storage in the conditions that were in Vietnam caused condensation and water intruded, and they couldn't use it as jet fuel. They needed to store it someplace. And at that time, I was only the operations officer. And so I suggested that we look into it, and several of the people on the staff said, it's kerosene. We've been using water to keep the dust down but it dries up overnight, and the VC comes in, digs a hole, put a bomb in, and we don't know until we hit it with an electronic device. If we had kerosene, we could spread that on the thing and keep the dust down very handily. And then when the VC came to dig a hole, and it would show where the bomb was. So that was a way. We asked for all the contaminated fuel that they could give us, because we had miles and miles of road that we had to sweep every day for mines. Worked out nicely.
And maintain them. So if a mine went off, then boom, you had to go and take care of it.
Yeah.
So what was the approach to mine eradication? Because that's a real good asset management story of taking a waste product and saving lives.
Yeah. So when we were able to find the mines without the electronic devices, I got permission from the higher ups to blow the mines in place. So we sent a 5-ton dump truck loaded with gravel. So when they blew it up, they could fill the hole and keep supplies running. And they said, "Oh yeah, sure, go ahead and do that." I got to tell you that when you do something like that, you have to be specific and make sure that everybody understands the parameters, because one of the teams found a mine on a bridge and blew it in place. A big enough hole that it took us 2 days to repair the bridge.
Yeah. So it's important to be specific with your asset management instructions.
Amen.
Interestingly enough, my father worked in the military in both active and reserve duties. And that's why he was able to have some of these other careers that we'll talk about in asset management. But his Marine Reserve unit was being transferred from Miller Beach, Indiana to Seattle. And being a Marine, he was going to go with. And my mother, who I call the general, said, "Oh, go right ahead, and you can visit me and your children right here anytime you want." So he arranged to get himself transferred to an Army Reserve unit.
Yeah. It was nearby.
And there's a lot there, but the story about the skiff, can you tell that one?
It was a division headquarters, Army division headquarters. And what happened was that the reservists had lots of knowledge, degrees, registered professional engineers on the staff. And so they were asked by Central Command to help them. For example, if they said they needed 2 regiments of infantry and a regiment of artillery to be used to solve this problem in whatever made up country it was. And so what would it take to feed them, house them? What would it take to keep them healthy, medical? What would it take in terms of infrastructure to bring the things that they needed from the coast to their unit, either by rail or truck or roads if they had them, or rivers if they needed that kind of information. And our reserve unit was able to tell them that. But what they couldn't do is go from Illinois to Florida, that's where his CENTCOM headquarters were, anytime that they were needed. And so we got together at the headquarters in Illinois and said, why don't we build a skiff, specialized compartmental information facility? which is like having a safe that you can put top secret stuff in, but people can work in there.
Yeah.
So they said, how would we do that? And I said, well, we can design one for this building. And then all you got to do is send us a secure question and we could do the work and send a secure answer back to you. And he said, that's a darn good idea. So we did. We designed and had built a skiff. And it was not just a safe where people could work, but it had compartments. For example, the door to the thing was a safe door.
Mm-hmm.
So you open the door and you come in and you come into an antechamber, and there were sentries there, armed sentries.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pass the thing, then you go through the next door and go into the skiff and work.
Wow.
If it wasn't, you'd be ejected one way or another. And so consequently, we were able to increase our productivity exponentially. And the cost was really minimal. It was the cost for what we were doing for them, it was like peanuts.
Right. Because for your team to be able to access the information previously, you'd have to physically go to Florida. And with reservists, you can't always get people when you want them. And
Yeah.
so you eliminate the cost of going there, you eliminate the time,
Yeah.
the inconvenience, and increase your productivity.
And also being able to transfer information without having to carry it, because we'd have to have special airplanes. You know, you couldn't go on commercial aircraft with
Right.
top secret material. And it eliminated all of that. It was a darn good idea.
And being a true military man, he says we, but
Absolutely.
it was his idea.
No. No. It was our idea, and I helped make it work.
Okay. So because he was a reservist, he was able to do other careers in carpentry in the summer, teacher during the school year, carpentry in the summer, and he was able to combine that and become a carpentry teacher for a vocational high school. And there's a real great asset management story there. Will you share that?
Well, yeah, there were 6 high school districts went into combination to set up an area career center. And they sent kids on buses during the school day to our center. And we had 3 periods a day. And each period consisted of at least 2 from the distant schools. So we'd have the kids for a good period of time. And all of a sudden, I started getting a lot of heat from the homeschool counselors. And they were telling me, how would you give this kid an A? The highest grade he's ever gotten in his entire career has been a D. I said, he earned it. I had to give it to him. He says, don't you have any math? Of course we have math. He said, well, how in that? I said, wait a minute. There's Charlie. He's the kid you're talking about. Charlie, come here. And he said, what do you want, boss? And I said, how many 2x4s do you need to frame a 30-foot wall, 16-inch on centers? Pulls out his calculator, and he told me the answer. I said, see? And but he used a computer. I said, oh, yeah. You expect him to use the multiplication tables, right? He says, absolutely. I bet you he don't know a multiplication table. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. He said, what do you want? I said, how much is 14 times 171? I said, a computer is a tool. It's like a saw. And because these are things that are important to him, he's willing to learn how to use them. That's the answer.
Mm-hmm. And when these students who found something that they liked and were good at and therefore excelled,
Absolutely, got A's.
what did you do with them?
Well, it was a solution to a problem.
Okay.
We were in an underserved area in Illinois,
Yes.
In a Chicago suburb. And there were a lot of houses that were being boarded up because they were HUD houses and people couldn't make the payments. And so that was a problem. And it was deteriorating the community. And so people talked about it, and somebody came up with the idea that we should talk to HUD and get those houses and flip them.
Okay.
So the school and the village got into contact with the HUD, and the village bought the houses for $1.
Okay.
The school said, we will provide labor and materials for which we will be repaid. The materials will be repaid. And we will get the houses in condition to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So our students turned at least one house a semester from deterioration to saleable.
Mm-hmm.
Once the village sold the house, we got the money for the material so we could use it on the next. And they got whatever profit there was, and they got one less deteriorating building in the
That's
worked out.
Yeah, that's an amazing asset management story. So there's so many. Let's go on to another career.
Hey, Mike,
Nick.
I just wanted to see if you have.
You're on mute, Nick.
I'm on mute still.
I can hear you now.
Cecilia had a question. When did she? It was for Ron, and I think it was about when he was a colonel of that engineering.
Yes.
When you did this work with your team, how did you involve them in the development of ideas? I think it was about mine or the fuel usage, but
So Cecilia,
involvement. Yeah.
you're asking a very important equity question, and we have a real good story about that coming up. So if you'll be patient, you'll hear that. But thank you for the question.
Equity and stakeholder involvement, maybe. Huh?
Yes, and we've got a whole section on the church involvement that will be addressing that. So what I was talking about was the time that you were the code enforcement officer for the village of South Holland. And my father had an Apple IIe computer, and this was in the 80s. I was like, what's that? What's the value of that? And he said what he said about the calculator. It's just a tool. It's like a hammer. You can use this tool to help you do things better. Like, oh, okay. So I guess you were doing your taxes and finance things here. But then he got the job as the Village of South Holland code enforcement officer. Used to flash his badge a lot whenever he had the chance. And can you tell us what you did there?
Well, what I did was enforce the codes of the village. If somebody had was supposed to have a paved driveway and he didn't, I would approach him and I would say, you need to have it paved. I'll come back in 10 days. And if you've got a contract, at least to have it paved, then I would come home and I'd use that Apple IIe because I don't type, but I can compute. And I would type a memo for the record stating that.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 10 days, I'd go back. And if he had a contract, it'd be fine. If he didn't have a contract, I'd take pictures and I'd write a ticket and I'd red tag the structure, which was caused a lot of angst, but it was my job.
You were using your home computer.
My home computer well, then I finally brought it to the village. I brought it down to make it convenient for me. And
that was the first computer
that was in the village. They didn't have any.
This was in the 1980s, right?
Well, yeah, 80s, right? Yeah.
So he took a personal property asset from his home and turned it into a municipal asset.
Yeah.
I'm sure they ended up keeping it or.
No, they didn't keep it. They bought their own.
Oh, okay.
They kept buying their own. In fact, they're completely computerized now, and,
Yeah.
and they have computer systems that are outstanding. But I used it because it made our job easier. We had to have addresses and property index numbers. And to do that was really difficult because looking them up took too much time. So one of the things that I did is I put down all the property index numbers because we had the books, we had all the property index numbers. And then what we did is went to the Cook County and found out what the address was for each of those and then indexed it. So we could call them up, and either way, we could all call it by address or call it, and the people at the village just couldn't believe that. In fact, they came in and said, what the hell are you doing? Heck are you doing? and I said, making our job easier. He said, what do you mean? I said, what's your address? And he gave me his address. And he was one of the trustees. And then I said, what's your property index number? He said, how do I know? So I said, boom. I said, this is your property. He says, oh.
Hey, the kids that you run, kids.
Oh, yeah. My wife reminded me that I didn't do all of the grunt work. I did a lot of it. I got the books, and then I went and talked to the high school counselors and said, if you've got kids that are interested in working in not in industry, but in offices, and he said, yeah. I said, well, isn't there a program that you can send them to us to be their mentor for? And he said, yeah. So they came in and did the actual physical typing. And then when it came time to do that, the Cook County sent us emails with the addresses, and they put the addresses on the thing, and it was fine. And we had that program several years, not just for that. We used it a lot, and then finally we couldn't get the kids anymore because of other departments.
Other departments are taking them as interns.
Yeah. So it was a beneficial thing.
So, how many people were there when you started for your department?
There was.
I thought it was just you.
No, well, I was the only code enforcement, but then we had one guy was a electrical commissioner,
Okay.
and he did the electrical inspections.
Okay.
Then I hired a part-time plumbing inspector, and now there are 2 secretaries, 2 inspectors, and a department head. And to get around, I had a used squad car. They took all the lights and bells and whistles off of it, painted it white, and said, "Here's your transportation." Now they got 2 pickup trucks and a sedan.
So you were there for 8 years?
9, yeah.
9? Okay. So basically you were, it cost money to run your department?
Yeah.
And by the time you left,
We were making money.
they were generating revenue for the village of South Holland. So that's pretty good.
That's how they could buy the computers.
So then you moved to South Holland in the 1950s when your local Catholic parish was still a barn on the farm property that they had bought to build the church and school.
The archdiocese bought the property to start a parish.
And I love this story. My father was altar boy in a barn.
Well, yeah.
So then over the many years that you were here at that parish, the neighborhood started changing. There were more ethnicities, there were more groups here.
Groups, right.
And can you tell us about how you wanted to start incorporating, including everybody that moved into the area?
It's unfortunate that I have to say it, but there were situations because of the people moving in that people were moving out because of ethnicities and so forth. And it was trying. It was a trying time. And so we, not me, we, three parishes had the same problem in the area. And so we contacted them and sponsored, our parish sponsored a meeting. And they got together and said, if we want to make a change, what we have to do is change people. So what we've got to do is get people aware of what's happening and let other people know about it. Cut the story short, we found out that we could have a facility that would allow us to have an overnight retreat, yeah, an overnight retreat. And the retreat was designed for individuals or families to talk about their particular aspect of this change.
Yeah.
This change. And so, and then we invited people from those three parishes. Actually, the three parishes provided the initial group of people that made the presentations. So then we had others from those parishes come in and listen over the weekend and talk with one another, eat with one another, and stayed there and got deep into what the situation was and how it didn't jive with what the mission of the organization was. And so they did. The outcome of it was that we did it for years, continued doing that for years. In fact, until the time when there were no more people that we could influence, they were all influenced. But in the meantime, other parishes started doing the same thing. In fact, there probably are some even doing it today because they wanted to get people involved in a specific problem and do it correctly.
So it was a diversity committee to increase inclusion, new people coming into the neighborhood, welcome them to the parish, and try to build up the community. So that's a real good example.
I love that story. And I'm just coming in to say thank you for those of us that have to leave in a few minutes because that's the end of our 30 minutes. But we will be going into overtime, is my understanding, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
And before we
got started.
Okay, great. Before we do that, I just want another thank you to the patron sponsors, ABS Quality Evaluations and Onuma System, as well as our organizational members. We're really appreciative of all of their support because this and other programs would not be possible without it. And then just a quick plug for next Thursday.
Good 19th. Correction, Nick.
It did say August 17th when I first put it up, but I caught it afterwards. So yes, Chris Gully, August 19th, Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We would love to have you all here and participate in the discussion.
And Chris is the chair of the U.S. Technical Advisory Group to ISO 55000. And he was our first guest of 2020 and talked about what the U.S. Technical Advisory Group does. And there's been a lot of activity since January. So he's going to fill us in on what has happened and then talk about what's going on into the future. So thanks for agreeing to stick around a little bit longer. So this is the portion where we can fight and have an argument and make this a real Bordenaro dining room situation. But are there any examples or stories that I didn't ask you about that you think are good asset management stories, or?
You covered a lot. You
Nah.
covered a lot.
We covered a lot. So can you talk about overcoming resistance to change and innovation? Because so much of what you're doing, what you've done, and what people who want to improve asset management at their organizations have to do is overcome that resistance.
Well, the easiest place to do it is in the military. Not because, you give orders, but because the military is one of the biggest school systems in the universe, because everything has to be taught. How to march, how to stand in line, how to, all that, everything. And so they're used to being taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, one of the things that had to be taught was how to set things up. And it's easy to set things up because you got 4 things you got to worry about. You got to worry about the people.
Yep.
You got to worry about how to do it, which includes operation and so forth. Then you got to worry about how to show it, how to show that this thing works and why it's better. You do that. And then the final thing is provide the supplies that you need to do all of this. And that's the 4 staff sections of any military function. So they're used to it. That's why it's the easiest place to do it. But for example, when I was teaching the kids at the technical center.
Oh, Cecilia is going to join us.
Okay.
But you were at the technical center.
At the technical center. These are kids who the counselors kept harping on the fact that they didn't do well in school. And it was obvious to me by talking to them that the reason that they didn't do well in school is because most schools have you college bound. And these kids were not interested in college bound. They were hands-on, physical kids, although not all of them. In fact, one of the semesters, I had a young lady come into class, and I looked around and said, "You're going to be a carpenter?" She said, "No. My dad told me I should have to take this class." I said, "Your dad?" He said, "Yeah, because I want to be an architect." And he said, "You shouldn't design something that'll kill people to build it. And the best way to do that is to learn carpentry." And I said, "I sure want to meet your dad." And he said, "He sure wants to meet you." But he was right. And a question that he had, will she be okay?
Mm-hmm.
With all those boys.
Yeah.
And
this is a great story. We could tell.
Yeah.
What you said to this.
Yeah,
to
blue collar kids. I said, "They're not blue collar. They're kids, and this is it." And he says, "Well, is she going to be?" I said, I guarantee.
Yeah.
And when the guys got there, they said, "This is not a date machine. This lady wants to learn carpentry, just like you. And if you will behave yourself, she'll learn. If you don't behave yourselves, you'll be gone. What can I tell you?" And they liked her.
Uh-huh.
They enjoyed her. They treated her like another carpenter. She had to carry wood. She had to hammer nails.
Yeah.
So it was a good deal.
But didn't you say on the first day of class, "This is my niece," or something like that?
No.
You said something.
No,
You personalized. You made it real personal.
I told her father that she'd be happy and safe.
Yeah.
And that's my guarantee. Now, I wouldn't tell you what your guarantee is, and it isn't.
Yeah.
And that's how we got it done.
So going back to the military, you said that military's education machine. And the other thing that I think is it's mission focused.
Absolutely.
And that's why when you phrase whatever is going to be done towards improving the mission is helpful. So the Coast Guard helped me understand mission on a really deep level. Jack Dempsey and Dave Hammond gave presentations that, oh, I get it. Everybody's focused on the one thing of saving people, getting them out of the water safely. That's it. So even if you're mopping floors on shore, you got to mop it right. So if somebody comes in and runs to get something, they don't slip and fall to go. And then, so
Absolutely.
Everything is focused on mission.
Absolutely.
And ISO 55000, the first item is align your strategic asset management plan to your organizational mission. Okay, that's great. Second thing, what's the second thing, Cecilia?
You
Oh, you got, yeah.
involve all relevant stakeholders. But now here's the thing. Your father, when he gave, the colonel, when he gave, the colonel, when he detailed what you do in the military, what did he start with?
Where? I don't
You
understand.
started with people. You've got number one.
One is people. Yeah, absolutely.
Number one is the people. And then comes the operations, and then the communication of how you're going to show it. And then the last thing of providing the supplies to do all of it and the resources and tools. So
she was taking notes.
Yes, I always do, especially when there's brilliance in the room. I will when I can learn. Absolutely. I've been learning a lot. I thought I knew you, Mr. Bordenaro. Colonel Bordenaro. No, these stories have been really interesting. And Mike is right. This whole question in ISO 55000, when they start with mission, they move quickly to the next thing, which is involve all relevant stakeholders in 55001.4.2. And you start with that. And Michael always says we should actually skip the mission at first and figure out who are the people, because the people, we're doing the mission for somebody.
Well, absolutely. Don't forget, in the military, they tell you, go take that hill, and the people on the hill are shooting at you. So people are very important.
That's right. All of the people, both the good ones and the bad ones in the military. Yeah. I had a question that.
So I want
you first. You first.
No, I want you to finish what you were saying, and I know what you were going to say, so I'll just go ahead and say it. Actually, the first step should be involving all relevant stakeholders, because when you actually get everyone to the table, this might be the first time that everyone is at the table and that you're being inclusive, and then you will hear things that might change your mission statement. So I think, anyway, that's my theological approach to ISO 55000. So what were you saying?
No, I would agree. And I actually did say that, but you weren't listening to me, but that's okay. Now here comes the sparring. I'm not at the Bordenaro table, but I can spar with Michael very well. The story of the parishes was the three parishes. I love the story of the three parishes that yielded loaves of understanding, because they did exactly that, coming together to figure out what the mission was. And the mission was community, right?
Amen. Yes.
It's community. And in any organization, it's interesting. You called it, Michael, you called what the Colonel was talking about in terms of
diversity and inclusion. Oh no, Cecilia, you have frozen. That is unfortunate. If you can hear us, maybe you can refresh, and that might unfreeze you.
The work with the students in the school.
Cecilia,
yeah,
you were frozen for a long period then.
I know, I don't know why.
But
Yeah,
so start your thought again.
oh, that'll be a long one. So when you were talking about the committee of coming together of the three parishes,
Yeah, the diversity committee.
was it literally called a diversity committee, Ben?
Absolutely, yes, that was the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was or wasn't, because that's
No,
interesting.
If there are any still out there, that's what they are.
Okay, and that was in
Because
the Catholic
we
Church.
ran out of people to tell about diversity. And so, but other parishes have done that.
And
I probably still are.
I've got to tell you. So my mother said there's going to be a public meeting of the diversity committee tonight at South Holland, and you should really see what your father says. It's like, oh, okay, I'll go. And my father revealed a story of when he said something very racist to someone and apologized to everyone. And
I
What
wasn't
did you
born. I
say?
don't know.
so he told the story, apologized. I wish the person was here. I would apologize to him. But if anybody has insulted you on behalf of them, I apologize.
Well, and that's the first thing, because coming together, whether it's for diversity or anything else, it's learning to listen to each other with an ear to understand and to care, and then being authentic in being who you are and owning who you are, owning your misunderstandings and saying, look, I didn't know. And one of the things I think is important is being able to say sorry, but also being able to say, that's okay, I forgive you, I accept your apology, and not canceling people like we're doing so much of lately. It sounds like you have led a lot of people away from canceling, Colonel Bordenaro. You have avoided people thinking that an asset, I know we're not supposed to talk about people as assets, but the relationship of an individual to a task, it should not be predetermined by their prior actions going forward. You should allow, even though they always say past performance proves future whatever, you should, yeah, whatever the saying is, you know the saying. You should allow, like Colonel Bordenaro did, the genius of people to come out. It sounds like you did that when you were doing the use of the fuel, even if it were your idea. You went to your team and they helped you discover that issue of finding the mines, right? Or did you figure that out?
It was a community effort. It was us. You know, Mike keeps saying you. No, all I did was tell him about it, but it was a us situation. Yeah,
you opened the door for
those four people. We had those four people. We had the people, we had the information people, we had the operation people and the supply people, and that's what it did. It. That's what also worked on the skiff. It was not. The only one thing that it is that it goes to a commander, and the commander makes the final decision. Then everybody stands up and salutes, and that's what we do. But all the rest of it is community.
Allow me to thank all the attendees who have been with us. So many have stuck around for these stories. We really appreciate you. And Dad, of course, thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.